Hello everyone, I'm Jacob, the Community Manager for Paradox Studio Black. Today, we'll be reading the words of Chop, a designer working on our upcoming expansion, All Under Heaven. Today's dev diary will be exploring the Japanese archipelago and the Korean peninsula, so let's take a closer look at the gameplay mechanics of three new government types in All Under Heaven: Ritsuryo, Soryo, and Meritocratic. The Japanese islands occupy an interesting position, being near enough to China to have been heavily influenced by its culture, but remote enough to have largely escaped direct interference from Chinese hegemons. Expanding to eventually cover the southern islands of Kyushu and Shikoku, and most of the main island of Honshu, the Yamato people occupy most of the archipelago, united under a single emperor and with no real external threats. However, the northern reaches of Honshu are populated by the Amishi tribes. Further north, the Ainu tribes reside on the island of Hokkaido, and far to the south, the island chains of Okinawa and Amami are home to the Ryukyuan tribes. Famed horse archers, the Amishi have long struggled against encroachment from their southern neighbors, who have launched incremental campaigns of conquest against them for centuries. Eagle-eyed viewers will notice that Japan is no longer red, instead taking the Murasaki purple of the wisteria flower to add some visual distinction from Chinese hegemons of the crimson variety. During our period, Japan transitioned from a peaceful bureaucratic realm headed by aristocratic families to a military shogunate dominated by more pragmatic samurai families, but is still a largely unwarlike place, far from the more militarized Japan of the later Sengoku era. Amidst all this, there is also a ruling emperor, or Tenno, who is nominally the head of state, but whose power varies considerably depending on the circumstances. The Yamato dynasty has held this position in an unbroken line stretching from ancient times even up to the present day, making them the longest continuous monarchy in human history. We strive to represent both of these styles of government, as well as the transition between them, along with the ever-present imperial family itself. In our earlier start dates, the Heian, or Peace Era, is in full swing, following Emperor Kanmu's establishment of the aptly named capital of Heian-kyo, now Kyoto, in 794 AD. This bustling city's palace is the center of the government bureaucracy and home of the imperial family, with the manners of aristocratic families close at hand. Taking inspiration from China, Ritsuryo is the Japanese legal framework, and, as in China, the many provinces of Japan are assigned to governors, or kokushi. Along with the many branches of the Fujiwara family, the other aristocratic families of note compete for appointments and recognition within Japan. Unlike China, the government is de facto directed by a regent ruling on behalf of the sitting emperor. For gameplay purposes, we have simplified the naming distinction between regents of underage emperors, Seisho, and those of adult emperors under the unified name Kampaku. Although nominally a regent, the Kampaku is not in a diarch relationship with the emperor, and both characters may have their own diarch when relevant. Historically, the position of regent was totally dominated by the main line of the Fujiwara family, who tried to minimize the influence of the imperial family beyond their ceremonial roles and maintain their preeminence among the nobility. The Fujiwaras were an extremely prolific family, whose influence and sheer size essentially dwarfed those of any other family, with almost 500 living members by 1178 AD. Playing as another bureaucratic family attempting to unseat the Fujiwara is a great challenge in itself, although not outright impossible. Becoming Kampaku works similarly to the acclamation succession found in Byzantium, and can be directly raised or lowered by spending influence, but it also has a unique system of specific weights related to the imperial family, and blocks, which we'll discuss more further in the video. Unlike China or other administrative government types in the game, provinces are largely county tier appointments, and generally a governor cannot hold more than one at a time. This represents the historic Ritsuryo provinces, or kuni, of Japan, and the fragmented power of any one official within it. Almost all historical kuni are represented as counties in-game, except for a few exceptions which were deemed too small and incorporated into a neighbor, such as Iga, Shima, and Awa in Chiba. By default, Ritsuryo rulers cannot create duchies or kingdoms in Japan, not even the Kampaku. Shrewd houses may instead fill many appointments with their own members, leveraging their power as a united family rather than as individuals, a theme common in our Japanese features. The manor is a new type of domicile unique to Japanese governments, with its own buildings, art, and bonuses. Ritsuryo is our only non-administrative government type that grants an estate-style domicile, retaining any upgrades when switching between the Japanese government types. More on that later. Some building chains are only unlocked by certain house aspirations, which will also be discussed further on. Though historically the emperor was largely sidelined throughout Japanese history, the Yamato family was still an influential political force. Over time, it became common for emperors to become monks, abdicating the throne to their heir to escape the direct responsibilities of the throne, while still influencing politics as a so-called cloistered emperor. In All Under Heaven, the Emperor is a playable character, a member of the Yamato family who holds a noble family and manor title like other Ritsuryo rulers, and has their own royal court. The Emperor is only a valid candidate for the Regency of Japan itself, while other members of the Yamato family are valid candidates only for governorships. If an emperor does manage to take the top title by influence, they will receive an event where they are given the option to abdicate and rule Japan as a powerful cloistered emperor, or attempt to hold on to both titles, representing the historical possibility of renewed direct rule, though doing so will not be well received by the chattering classes. Historically, many branches of the Yamato family were eventually disinherited to prune the royal ranks, taking new names, the most famous being the various Taira and Minamoto houses, identified by which emperor they descend from. In our game, Yamato governors can form or join these houses, organically creating new branch families. The sitting top liege of Japan, be they Kampaku, Shogun, or Tenno, always has access to a unique law category, Imperial policies, issued in the name of the emperor. Despite the relative political stability, the policies of the Japanese government varied substantially throughout our era, as the bureaucracy was replaced and external politics changed. Like crown authority, imperial policies can be freely changed aside from a small cooldown. There are a variety of available policies suited to different objectives and situations, some with wide-reaching edicts which can substantially change gameplay within the Japanese islands. For example, rulers in the Empire of Japan are not able to freely declare external wars, representing the general lack of ambition for conquest besides extending the northern frontier for most of our period. However, by implementing the Imperial expansion policy, the usual inter-realm casus belli available elsewhere may be unlocked, along with a reduction to the cost of mercenaries and men-at-arms. Other policies change the balance between government types in Japan or provide simple situational benefits at an opportunity cost. Conversely, if Japan finds itself under true threat from an external invasion, the defense mobilization policy will become available, providing an extra edge and advantage and allowing Ritsuryo rulers access to the usually Soryo limited mounted samurai horse archer men-at-arms. Each house in Japan has an aspiration similar to the house powers of Byzantium, representing the character and goals of the family as a whole. Each aspiration has several levels, each granting new boons. The house head may spend prestige to increase the level of their current aspiration or change its type, starting from the lowest level once again when changing aspiration type. Each type of aspiration is focused on a different area, with some more suited to certain government types than others. Service grants bonuses to governor efficiency and candidate score, and is a good pick for those who wish to climb the bureaucratic ranks and serve emperor. Ceremony grants bonuses to prestige and renown generation, a sure choice for the noblest of families. And strength improves men-at-arms and martial skill, ensuring dominance on the battlefield. Beyond the bonuses granted, the aspiration a house chooses will also determine their political goals to a certain extent, and is a driving force in another new feature, house blocks, which we'll discuss a little later in the video. Our free patch accompanying All Under Heaven includes another family-oriented mechanic, the house relation. These work similar to character relations like rivals or friends, but take place between two houses rather than between two characters. Now, whenever a friendly or hostile action is taken between two houses within the same realm or of similar rank, such as declaring war or arranging marriages, the relation between these two houses will increase or decrease in response. There is a spectrum of 7 levels of house relation, from feud to amity, with each ranked towards the extremes, modifying the opinion of all house members to members of the other house. In addition, each level grants other bonuses or modifiers to standard gameplay when interacting with the other house, such as allowing the free negotiation of alliances or reducing the cost of all wars. This change allows intergenerational disputes and collaborations between families to persist more organically, adding another layer of reactivity to the world at large. Like character memories, the reason for changes in house relationship over time are tracked, and can be similarly browsed to get a picture of how a relationship between houses has developed over time. With the fragmented political map within Japan, we wanted a better way to depict the various political groups, and a way to allow them to defend each other without traditional alliances, maintaining the fragile peace that so often prevailed during this period. Our solution to this is house blocks, and they work similarly to confederations that were added in Cons of the Steppe, but with houses as members rather than characters. A leading house acts as the main decision maker of the block, with other houses to be considered their willing cooperators. The house head of the leading house gets to decide which houses are allowed entry to the block, and may also expel other member houses at will. Each house block has a cohesion value, with additional bonuses for all members unlocked for keeping this value high. Cohesion is based on the number and government of member houses, whether their house aspiration matches that of the leading house, and the relations between member houses of the house block. The aspiration of the leading house acts as a sort of defining principle of the block. A service-oriented block will naturally represent Ritsuryo interest, while a strength-focused block seeks to expand military power. The aspiration of a house is not generally limited by their government type, and various combinations are possible. Generally, multiple blocks led by houses of the same aspiration type are not common, with interests coalescing around the most able leadership. Crucially, block members will automatically join the factions of the house head of their block's leading house, increase their succession score for Kanpaku if they are Ritsuryo, and also join in their defensive wars, including tyranny wars started by attempts at imprisonment or revocation. This makes challenging a block something to consider carefully, and any wars that do occur are far more impactful than they would be if Japanese vassals were merely isolated county-tier rulers with scattered alliances. In addition, acquiring governorships for members of houses within your block, be they your own house or others, can directly aid in strengthening your factions and succession score or preventing attacks to your position, while being without a block leaves you worryingly exposed to your political enemies. As the Heian era wore on, many noble families, frustrated by the fierce competition for appointments with the Fujiwara, despaired of ever climbing the bureaucratic ranks, and instead left the capital, establishing manors in the provinces. Far from the disinterested aristocrats of the capital, the power of these families eventually grew to the point that they de facto ruled as a hereditary local nobility. We represent this in All Under Heaven by allowing Ritsuryo rulers to establish a held appointment as a fief, switching their government type. This is considered a crime by the Kanpaku, however, and all Ritsuryo governors are able to use a casus belli which returns the title to the appropriate government type. However, Soryo rulers pack more of a punch than the bureaucrats, with access to mounted samurai horse archer men-at-arms types. In addition, Soryo rulers will generally band together to defend themselves, making resisting their spread a less simple proposition. By our last start date, almost all of Japan was effectively beyond the reach of the Ritsuryo apparatus, instead now dominated by the rising Bushi families, most notably the Taira and Minamoto houses. By 1178 AD, the head of the Kanmu Taira, Kiyomori, had effectively supplanted the power of the Fujiwara, ruling as a de facto dictator in a manner which would ultimately come to be known as a shogun. Just 2 years after our last bookmark, the Minamoto houses resisted the overwhelming Taira domination in the Genpei, or Minamoto-Taira War. with their leader Yoritomo ultimately wiping out the Taira and establishing the first true shogunate in Kamakura. Like Japan, the Korean peninsula occupies an interesting position as a heavily Chinese-influenced region with its own deep cultural and political history. Though it is at greater exposure to invasion from various states and tribes which lay to its north, it is a fairly developed mountainous region, and any threats will struggle to gain a foothold as long as Korea remains united. By our earliest start date, the Gim dynasty of the unified kingdom of Silla in the east had long subdued its main rivals, the kingdoms of Pakchi in the south and Goryeo in the northwest. The struggle between these three states, known as the later Three Kingdoms or Husamguk, had raged for centuries, with Silla ultimately emerging victorious. Further north, the kingdom of Bohai straddles the hinterland between China, Korea, and the Jurchen tribes. However, this status quo would not last for long. A resurgent Goryeo aristocracy under the Wang dynasty would ultimately overthrow Silla, establishing the unified kingdom of Goryeo based in Kaesong, ruling the entire peninsula until the establishment of the Joseon dynasty in the late 14th century. Meanwhile, soon after Silla fell, Balhae was conquered by Khitan nomads, who would later establish the Chinese-influenced state of Great Liao. We represent the unification of the later three kingdoms in All Under Heaven via a special decision, Unify the Husamguk, which can be taken by any ruler who holds at least one of the kingdoms and has taken over the entire peninsula in a dominant position. This decision destroys the old kingdom titles and creates an empire tier unified kingdom title, which may be renamed Samhan or Goryeo based on the culture of the unifier. This is the only way for a Korean culture ruler to form the Korean Empire tier title. This decision also creates the Yongsun throne, a special primogeniture kingdom tier titular title similar to the Chrysanthemum throne of Japan. The name of this title may also vary based on the culture of the decision taker, with Yongsun, or Dragon, deriving from the legend of King Taejo the Great's draconic heritage, the historical founder of Goryeo. In addition, this decision increases cultural acceptance between your culture and other Korean cultures, making it easier to form a new hybridized unified Korean culture. The new unified kingdom title also grants a unique acclamation-style succession law, which is weighted towards the ruling Yongsun throne dynasty. This leaves open the historical possibility of a powerful family taking control of the state from the royalty, as happened by our latest start date with the rise of the military dictators, or Banju, beginning with Yi Uibang and Zhang Jungbu, leaving the royal Wang dynasty in a ceremonial position similar to the Yamato family in Japan. Along with the Korean kingdoms, the kingdom of Dai Viet, Balhae, and the Liao and Jin states will use a form of government similar to the Chinese celestial government, known as Meritocratic government. This government type represents the largely administrative states heavily influenced by China due to proximity, interference, or their aspiration to claim the mandate of heaven as a conqueror. Meritocratic governments retain the noble families, estate, merit, and examinations of the celestial government type, promoting their bureaucrats to governorships via a similar system, but may not hold imperial examinations of the highest tier. When other forms of government transition into administrative via decision, if they are near to celestial China, they tend to adopt meritocratic rather than the standard administrative government type. We'll conclude today's development diary with a look at the current map of Japan, Korea, and the surrounding lands, all of which is, of course, subject to change based on feedback and should be taken with a pinch of salt. This is not final. Let's start with the de jure title structures of the Far East. As shown on screen, Japan does not have de jure rights to the north of Honshu at game start, given the ongoing campaigns against the Amishi tribes, and that part of Japan being the least integrated into the bureaucracy. Instead, the kingdom of Hitakami, or Michinoku if ruled by Japan, is de jure part of the Empire of Amur, along with the islands of Schahalian and Hokkaido and the kingdom of Ainumosor. On the mainland, the Empire of Samhan, or Goryeo, is bordered by the Empire of Angdong, comprised of Balhae and its environs. Shown on screen now is the internal kingdoms of Japan, made up of Chukushi covering the island of Kyushu, Yamato covering western Honshu, and Shikoku, and Azuma covering most of eastern Honshu. On the mainland, Samhan is divided between its three constituent kingdoms of Goryeo, Baekje, and Silla. As for duchies, Japan is split into regional administrative divisions based on the Goki Shichido circuits. As Ritsuryo rulers cannot create duchies, they will mostly be formed by powerful Soryo lords, who will use their house names for these titles. The duchies of Samhan are based on the mock administrative divisions of the Kingdom of Goryeo. To the north, Balhae is split into administrative divisions, while other areas are based on the dominant tribes of those areas. Our cultures are still a work in progress, but broadly speaking, Japan is mostly united under the Yamato culture, while the cultures of Korea's later three kingdoms are yet to be united in the Goryeo culture present by 1066. To the north, the Balhae culture is a hybrid of Goryeo and Mohe cultures. Our faith map is currently undergoing a large overhaul, so we're unable to show that at this point, but we will cover that in future dev diaries. That wraps up our development diary for today. We hope you enjoyed this early look at Japan and Korea and All Under Heaven. Your thoughts and feedback are most welcome. Leave a comment below and we'll try our best to answer as many of your questions as we can. Thank you again for watching, and as always, if you want to stay up to date on everything Crusader Kings 3, then please like this video and subscribe to the channel.